Hi, class. I hope you guys are doing well. I have with me today my little assistant, Rye. She is not very good at graphic design, but she's super cute. Okay, this isn't going to last long. Bye. Okay, so I thought I would do a video today. It's been a while since we talked about the design principles. So I'm going to review this week's design principle before asking you to jump into it and do your own design. So here is my website. Graphic Design 2 page is for you guys. I just wanted to point you to this presentation that I did with you in class a while ago here. This red part where it says click here, presentation on composition and design principles. So if you remember, this has the directions for the flip book and all 7 design principles, and then a link to these different videos that talk about them. So the principle for this week that I'd like you to focus on is contrast. Okay, so we're going to watch the part of this video that talks about contrast first.
Contrast simply means that one item is different from another. In layout and composition, contrast can help you do many things. For example, catch the reader's eye, create emphasis, or call attention to something important. There are lots of strategies for creating contrast. You can use color, adjust the size, shape, or visual weight of an object, or use contrasting styles of text. Contrast is also closely tied to hierarchy, a visual technique that can help the viewer navigate your work. In other words, it shows them where to begin and where to go next using different levels of emphasis.
Okay, so I'm going to pause that there. You can see how hierarchy is related to contrast. You can create hierarchy by using contrast. In art, I talk about contrast, but usually what I mean in art, like in drawing, is value contrast. So this is a good example of value contrast. Value is how light or dark something is. That is part of it in graphic design, but it's not the only thing that you can use to make contrast. Okay, on Pinterest, I've created this board to show a few examples of different ways to create contrast. This first one is a good example of color contrast and value contrast, actually. So color and value at once. We have dark, dark, light, light, and this nice, rich medium brown. So the colors are in contrast. So that makes it visually interesting. It draws the viewer in and makes them want to look at it. It looks interesting if you have a contrast of colors and values. This one here also contrasts colors. Green and red are what we call complementary colors in art because green and red are opposite each other on the color wheel. So that means that when they are side by side, they make each other pop. They make each other like stand out. So using a complementary color scheme like this can be a good strategy to make something aesthetically pleasing and have contrast. But also I wanted to point out the contrast in the typefaces. So we have this blocky, heavy typeface. When I hover over it, it gets dark. Anyway, you can see the differences in types. There are 3 different type here. This one for good is a sans serif. It's a little simpler. And then this day is heavy, and it actually is a serif. And then we have these script fonts too. So all together, there's a very nice contrast of fonts, which is good because this entire design is basically just fonts. There's like a couple design elements with the shapes, but that's it. It's almost only type. So you can pair typefaces together that are different. This one shows a good contrast in medium. We have these line drawings and then this pop of color. And I do think it's a painting or a drawing, not a photograph, but it might have been a photograph. Like you can kind of juxtapose something more realistic with something less realistic. It's like a style contrast in that case. And that definitely creates emphasis. The viewer knows exactly where to look when it stands out that much from everything around it. Here's another one where there's a color and a style contrast going on here, where we have these like soft, muted tones and it's realistic looking. And then bam, this black ink is very contrasting to the rest of it. So you look at that and you want to make sure that there is a conceptual reason for the contrast that you have. I mean, sometimes it's just like value contrast, it looks good, and that's okay. But here, that you definitely know that there is a story here. There is a reason that the designer is drawing your eye to that black so prominently. And the fact that it's empty behind the black also creates contrast. It's not just to the face and the colors, it's also to the background. So pay attention to overlapping and what things are in front or behind, because that will affect your contrast. Like your use of negative space can be very strategic. Here we have a contrast of medium. This top of the pineapple is a photograph, and then it's combined with other elements that are like definitely illustrative. So you can use a photograph that you take, bring it into Photoshop, cut it out. You know how to do that with a layer mask, and then set it next to other things so that it pops out. This is very simple, but it still has contrast. If you look closely, the weight of the lines are varied throughout the picture. So it gets skinnier and heavier as the line moves around. That makes it more interesting. Something that's very simple can still have contrast and still have visual interest. On this one, I thought it was interesting that they're contrasting organic and geometric shape. And also notice the value contrast. The darkest part of this right here draws your eye right there. It's the darkest part right next to white. So your eye goes straight to that dark point. So as the designer, you control where the viewer lands, like where their eye goes in the design. Okay, so these are all the examples that I pulled out. So I just want to review really fast ways that you can contrast. So I have Illustrator open. You can contrast the medium. So that could be photography, computer graphics, hand-done art and illustration. You can contrast style. You can contrast fonts. You can contrast color and also value. Don't forget value. Every color has a value as well. So color and value. Size, you can contrast the size. If you have a big font and a little font, then you're going to look at the big one first. Sometimes, a lot of this is really intuitive. Size, shape, there's probably other things, but those are some good ones to start with. So your assignment for this week is to create a poster that is somehow about the COVID-19 event, because that is what we're all thinking about. That's what we're all seeing. So you can make a poster that is funny or educational, like it could be instructional, something about like what to do and not to, or how to wash your hands. Or it could be encouraging. So think about your family and friends and what they would enjoy or what they would think was funny. If you're so tired of COVID, think of a different subject. You don't have to do that, but that's just my suggestion for a way to direct creativity and make sure that you are including contrast in at least one of these areas. I think that contrasting the medium would be really interesting. Like if you did part photograph, part handmade, or computer illustrated. Definitely think about contrast in value. If nothing else, you do want a contrast in value. We've done a lot with typography, so you could do that too. Okay, guys, I hope you're having a good week. I hope you're doing okay. Please email me with any questions that you have at all about this. I'm sitting at home. You're sitting at home. So don't hesitate to reach out if you need something. Okay. See you later.